Danielle Smith slams Liberal over immoral free speech claim. Canadians are stunned. In a recent address, Danielle Smith has expressed profound concerns about the direction in which the Liberal government, influenced by Mark Carney, is heading. She characterizes this trajectory as a substantial failure, pointing to a lack of accountability, a troubling centralization of power, and manipulation of media narratives. Smith argues that the government's approach to fiscal policy is unsustainable, criticizing what she describes as socialist spending habits that prioritize redistribution over wealth creation. This disconnect between governmental messaging and the realities faced by Canadians, particularly concerning issues like security and political bias, has left many citizens feeling disillusioned, striking at the heart of what it means to have a responsive and responsible government. One of the most contentious topics currently being debated is the media's portrayal of Jagmeet Singh, particularly regarding alleged security threats he has faced. Smith highlights the irony of Singh receiving special protection while attending public events, such as a Kendrick Lamar concert, without visible security. She raises questions about the media's selective reporting, particularly given Singh's past visa issues stemming from controversial associations. In her view, the media's failure to provide context creates a biased narrative that unfairly shields some politicians while vilifying others, like Pierre Poilievre, who has no known security breaches but faces scrutiny for opposing Carney and Trudeau's policies. This perceived double standard in media coverage is troubling, as it undermines the public's trust in journalism and raises concerns about the integrity of political discourse in Canada. Smith's critique extends to the internal workings of the Liberal government, where she claims that ministers are often sidelined and treated as mere political tokens. This lack of inclusion in key decision-making processes contributes to mismanagement and dissent within the government ranks. She contrasts this with the intense scrutiny faced by conservative leaders, noting a marked disparity in the treatment of Liberal and conservative politicians alike. While a Liberal cabinet minister with questionable ties receives little backlash, Poilievre is harshly criticized for standing against the current administration's agenda, illuminating a significant imbalance in political accountability. This inconsistency raises critical questions about the fairness of political processes and the criteria by which politicians are judged. Moreover, Smith raises alarms about what she perceives as authoritarian tendencies within the Liberal government. She argues that while fascism is conventionally associated with far-right ideologies, the modern left employs similar authoritarian tactics, such as centralized power and censorship. This, she argues, is evident in the government's use of cabinet orders and emergency powers to bypass parliamentary processes. Legislation like Bills C-11 and C-18, which regulate media and speech, further exemplifies this trend, according to Smith, as it limits free expression and suppresses dissenting views. Such measures, she believes, jeopardize the foundational principles of democracy and free speech that are vital to a healthy political environment. Particularly concerning to Smith is Bill C-63, which permits punishment for individuals based on the potential for harmful speech. She contends that this creates a chilling effect, especially for those holding conservative or dissenting opinions. Recent arrests for online posts critical of certain social issues serve as a stark reminder of how the government may politicize national security to silence opposition. This misuse of security tools, she argues, turns them into ideological weapons rather than protective measures. The implications of such legislation extend beyond just individual cases. They threaten the broader landscape of free expression and the ability for citizens to engage in open dialogue about critical issues facing society. On the media front, Smith accuses the Liberal government of using taxpayer funds to maintain control over public narratives, particularly by financially supporting outlets like the CBC. She views this as an anti-democratic practice that stifles dissent and limits access to alternative viewpoints. The media's role in promoting figures like Mark Carney, without proper democratic oversight, further illustrates what she sees as a manipulative top-down approach to governance. This funding model, in her opinion, undermines journalistic integrity and fosters a culture of compliance, rather than one of independent inquiry and accountability. Smith also critiques the government's failure to deliver on progressive promises, such as the underfunding of important initiatives like the Every Child Matters ground searches. She argues that liberal rhetoric often prioritizes optics over tangible results, while schools increasingly push progressive ideologies that undermine traditional values and parental rights. This trend, in her eyes, is a form of indoctrination that stifles critical thinking and open discourse, ultimately leading to a generation of students who may lack the ability to engage in meaningful debates about societal values and issues. The implications of this shift in educational focus are profound, as they could lead to a future where dissenting opinions are marginalized or outright silenced. A significant concern is the apparent alignment between government policy and corporate interests, which Smith describes as crony capitalism. In her view, this creates an environment where only those who align with the regime's agenda benefit, thus stifling innovation and economic growth. She perceives Carney's recent attempts to adopt a more conservative stance as disingenuous, suggesting they are merely strategic moves aimed at co-opting opposition rather than presenting authentic alternatives. This perception of insincerity raises doubts about the government's commitment to genuine reform and accountability, further alienating citizens who seek real change rather than superficial adjustments. Smith underscores the critical need for a thriving economy as the foundation for any meaningful social policy. She warns that without a focus on wealth creation, any efforts at redistribution will ultimately falter. The current governmental trajectory, she argues, jeopardizes vital economic activities, particularly in the oil and gas sectors, which are essential for generating national revenue. This not only poses economic risks, but also reflects an ideological bias against traditional energy resources. As Canada navigates increasingly complex global energy dynamics, the government's stance could have far-reaching consequences for the nation's economic stability and energy independence. In conclusion, Danielle Smith urges Canadians to confront rising authoritarianism, declining accountability, and media bias in Ottawa. She calls for a return to core values like free speech, fiscal responsibility, and genuine democratic engagement. With increasing centralization and ideological control, she warns that citizens must act now to hold leaders accountable. Canada's democracy and individual freedoms are at stake, and active civic participation is essential to protect the nation's future.